Thank you for listening to the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. Stay connected, stay curious, and join us again for our next episode.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. I have the pleasure of being joined today by Phil Rogofsky. He's the founder and executive director of the Maryland STEM Festival. Phil, thanks for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be here, Colin, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, so wanted to get started because one of the reasons that Phil and I met was very much because of the STEM Festival. Um, in full disclosure, I've agreed to assist Phil with that. But tell us about, what is the Maryland STEM Festival, and what is it? What are its goals, and how did you start it?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, the Maryland STEM Festival is an annual event which I and some people organized a little over a decade ago. It consists of hundreds of events all across Maryland, focusing on everything STEM related, everything involving science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We like to say from astronomy to zoology. And these events are, for the most part, free. They're family oriented, they're fun. They take place a wide range of locations. Our largest number of events are at the public libraries. The public libraries in Maryland do a phenomenal job with STEM, but they're in schools, museums, colleges and universities, parks, private companies, you name it. Any organization that's interested in promoting STEM is welcomed and encouraged to join the community we've created. And the events take a wide range of formats. They can be everything from your typical event where you have a collection of booths for people to go to. They can be training classes, they can be live performances, they can be competitions, they can be star parties, they can be capture the flag events. So whatever the host, which is what we refer to our partner as, wants to do that promotes STEM, they are welcome to do. And we want them to do what they feel that is their strength. We don't have rules, guidelines that you have to do X, Y, and Z, because that sort of takes some of the fun out of it and also makes things more complicated. We
Right.
allow the host to do what they do best. As I said, this will be the 11th year of the STEM Festival. It technically starts on Friday 17th, although we have a kickoff on the 16th. And this year we have over 400 events listed all across Maryland. And some of them are very small, a handful of people. Some run into the hundreds, nearly thousands. And the purpose of the festival is to increase awareness of STEM, increase interest in STEM, show everyone that STEM is fun. It's not the dry, boring things that unfortunately some people experience in school. And we also want to encourage students to consider STEM careers because so much of the workforce is STEM related, and I think that's going to increase, not decrease. So we're hoping that by attending our events, students who have not thought about STEM as a career or didn't know STEM could be a career start thinking along those paths and hopefully follow those paths.
Makes a lot of sense. So I guess what is the age range that you're targeting in here? When do you start delivering the STEM message?
We actually start very early. We gear for pre-K through high school, and then there'll be some events that are geared for college and even adults. Um, a frequent topic recently has been courses teaching older people how to use technology, how to use AI. So as much as possible, we like the events to be family oriented so the entire family can experience the events, especially with the younger kids. When they see their parents, their older siblings involved, then they seem to want to take interest in too. I mentioned that we go as low as pre-K, and a lot of that is geared for or comes from the libraries. They do a lot of activities for the younger students, and as I said, work very closely with the libraries, but a lot of other organizations do things geared for young. Many of our events are, of course, geared for a specific age group because the things that appeal to a pre-K person is not necessarily going to appeal to a college student or a middle school student. So that's what we're gearing for age-wise. Again, we're trying to catch as much of the gambit, but particularly pre-K through high school.
Makes sense. Um, and is there any work with the Maryland government specifically that I'm just thinking about Governor Moore's like year of service thing? Is there any idea about having, these young people that want to be in STEM, get them opportunities to do volunteer work that would count towards that? Is that a thought?
That's a thought, but that's not something I've been able to do yet. One thing I need to explain is that it's Despite the big missions, despite coordinating 400 events, we're a really small organization. Basically, I am the entire organization. I have a temporary part-time person. I have a few volunteers helping me, but mostly it is my organization and I do most of the work. So there's a lot of areas I'd like to touch on that I haven't been able to. Um, there's so much that can be done and so much that needs to be done. I do as much as I can.
And then that really resonates with me because again, just STEM is we hear so much specifically in the cybersecurity realm about all these glut of unfilled positions. I think it's like 750,000 unfilled positions for STEM. And where are these STEM workers going to come from? Well,
Mhm.
speaking as the father of a 9-year-old boy, that's part the children are the no matter what we're doing today, they're the ones that are going to be maintaining it in the future. And um, I guess, what do you think is the state of STEM education today in public, private schools that you've seen?
I'd like to think that is moving in a positive direction. I think the interest is growing, the number of activities is growing, but there is still a ways to go. There's still among some students, among some families, that STEM is not for them, that STEM is only for certain people, that STEM um, basically doesn't look like them. And that's one thing we focus on. We try to have as diverse in a variety of STEM activities and in different locations. One of the reasons that we do it this way, it's referred to frequently as a regional science or STEM festival. We try to have events all across the state because if you do one event in one location, you're really cutting off a lot of people. If you do an event in, say, Baltimore and it's one day, well, first off, if you miss that one day, wherever you are, you're out of luck. But
Right.
particularly if you're on the Eastern Shore or Southern Maryland or Western Maryland, you're not going to drive all the way to Baltimore for one event. Whereas this way, if we have multiple events around the state, hopefully everyone has an opportunity to go to at least one festival event, hopefully many events.
Yep. And when that local flavor solves a little bit of the problem of STEM not looking for like you because it would
Mhm,
be a regional, every regional variation. And that's interesting. And that's something that it's been sort of because let's be honest, STEM looks like me
mhm,
typically. That's, I mean, I even have the shirt for it. I'm literally the avatar of STEM right now.
mhm,
Um, and that has just always been the case. And, specifically getting more young women into or young
mhm.
girls into STEM. And that, do you have any thoughts on that you'd like to share about like ways that we can get them? Because I'm starting to believe I like the approach of you have to start early because whatever thing that makes a person interested in STEM or not interested in STEM seems, in my experience, to occur before you're 10 years old.
Mhm.
It doesn't just, does that make sense?
Yes, well, there's a phrase that's been used called if you don't see it, you can't be it. And so getting back to girls, for example, one of our events is called Girls STEM Empowerment Event, empowerment. And so we have that event this year. It'll be at Severna Park on November 13th, where we recruit women STEM professionals and women who are involved in STEM activities and bring them together and encourage girls, although boys are still welcome, to come to this event and see women who are working in the STEM fields and who like STEM and think STEM is appropriate. And hopefully that will inspire these young ladies to, again, think of STEM as something that can include them and that's something they can pursue. Leading along or staying with the cyber concept, each year we do at least one or two event, which we basically it's a program where we have Girl Scouts earn their cybersecurity badge.
Oh, cool.
And there again, we recruit women STEM professionals and they run this activity. And we've had 50 to 100 Girl Scouts at these events, and they're learning about cyber. They also are seeing women who are in the STEM field, so they're getting sort of a double barrel that STEM can be for them, and STEM is fun and STEM is interesting. And that's another major concept behind the festival or is that STEM is fun. And we have to make it fun. Otherwise, the students, they're not going to want to pursue it. They're not want to be involved. So while the events can take any format, we want them to push the funness, the wow factor.
That is interesting. Yeah, this and speaking of these, reaching out to the young women, has there been any thought to having male cybersecurity professionals mentoring these young women and not necessarily having it. And here's my thought process on that. The STEM field is, and I speak from experience, overwhelmingly male. In
Hmm.
some cases, 95% male. Now, I will say, as someone who's worked for over 20 years in there, some of the most talented, intelligent, and capable engineers that I've ever had the privilege of working with and learning from have been women.
Hmm.
And they've always been interested in STEM, and they don't ever actually even remember a time that they didn't. I had a recent experiment. Again, I do a cybersecurity thing, so I'm not going to name their names because they're. So I have two cousins. We'll call them K and E.
Hmm.
K thinks that cousin Colin is awesome. He gets to work
Hmm.
with computers. He is like a cyber guru. E is, and Phil, you may have experience with this. I certainly do. When you're sort of the nerdy guy that likes computers in like elementary school, that I found that girls had a way of like physically displaying that they were profoundly uninterested in what I was talking
Hmm.
about. And E was one of those people who was like, do we have to be doing this? But unfortunately for her, Kay had informed her that she was her sidekick. So she had to sit there for like an hour and a half and watch me teach Kay how to do a cybersecurity deployment, command line, everything. I'm walking her through this. It wasn't particularly fast, but she is more than capable of doing it. And I'm just looking at them. These are two young girls. They're about like a few months apart in age. And I'm like, you go to STEM festivals, you build robots that battle other robots, and you compete against other teams. You could not be more physically unhappy to be here. What changed? What is different between you two? Because I'm pretty convinced I'm never going to be able to turn E into a STEM enthusiast. It's like that ship has sailed. And I don't think it's anyone discouraged her. It just was an interesting thing because again, I've always worked with the they're very rare, the women that are in STEM, and I have to imagine it's uncomfortable being in such an overwhelmingly male thing. But back to my question, I feel like that means that us as men, if we do want to have more women, we have to be part of it, and opportunities to mentor, teach them how to work in these environments, and we have to learn how to work in a mixed environment like that. Does that make sense? I don't even know if there was a question mixed in that rambling thing.
I mean, it certainly makes sense. I mean, eventually you have to go out into the world and you're dealing with all sorts of people. So you have to kind of disregard different facts about this people, but it is still easier if you're working with people who are similar to you, who look like you. I mean, as I said, you can't be it if you don't see it. So if you don't see, especially if you're a woman, you don't see women engineers, you don't necessarily think you can be it. If you're a person of color and you don't see other STEM people of color, it's hard for you to kind of conceive of you being in that world.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where I, my policy in life has been when people assert things like that to take their word for it because I
Mhm.
don't know otherwise. I just wish there was a way that we could figure out to work because I've felt there's been times where again, I appreciate you having me on these boards because again, you're trying to make a diverse board. There
Mhm.
have been opportunities to talk to these sort of groups that I very, very, very want to. And I believe I've actually heard the phrase, we'd love to have you, but you would throw our ratio off.
Mhm.
Which to me, it's like, okay, so you've already got your white guy, so therefore you can't have any more. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's discouraging, I will
Mhm.
say, as someone
Mhm.
who is desperately, it's like I'm trying to volunteer my time and being told no, I guess, is frustrating, I
Yeah.
guess, to me on that, if that makes sense.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the wow factor.
Yeah.
And the other thing that inspires and brings students in is enthusiasm.
Hmm.
One of the programs we do is the middle school STEM professional match. And in that program, we recruit STEM professionals and they go into middle schools. We've identified, I don't know, about 10 or 12 around the state. And they go in and talk to students about their careers and their fields. And regardless of what they look like, the most important thing is that they are enthusiastic.
Right.
And that enthusiasm filters down to the students. When students see that the persons come to visit them is enthusiastic about what they're doing, that brings them in regardless of almost any other factor.
Right. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And you have to find the people who are already interested in it that have self-selected into like if they formed a cybersecurity club or a computer club.
Right.
One thing that just popped in my head. So I went to Gilman for high school. Has there been any thought of partnering with any of the private all-girls schools like Bryn Mawr, Roland Park that are out there that by definition are all women and they
Mhm.
have STEM environments there? Is that
Mhm.
something that you've looked into? I'm just curious.
We do work with some of those, especially Bryn Mawr. Bryn Mawr has been doing a career fair as part of the STEM Festival. We've got an event coming up. Um, we're doing STEM at the Y next Sunday, and they're doing a table there. So we're always looking for ways to partner with groups that, again, are trying to bring girls into STEM and schools that are involved, again, helping schools that are all girl get involved with STEM.
Sure. Um, and have you done any work with Baltimore City? Again, trying to get, people of minorities that are underrepresented in STEMs into it to show that there's another. Is that something you've been working with like the city on?
Not so much at the city level, but I do work with a number of schools which have very large minority populations and also some with very um, economically disadvantaged areas and trying to bring STEM into some of those schools.
Sure. So I'll ask a question because this is interesting. So you might be aware I've done a lot of work with in the agricultural space, the
Mhm.
rural areas, which I would also argue are also underrepresented in STEM.
Yep.
I came up, if I said the term Cyber 911, would you know what I was referring to?
I'd have an idea, but I wouldn't necessarily want to be quizzed on it or,
Well, it's a word that I made up, so don't feel bad about it.
okay.
But if you can guess, it's here. I'll demonstrate. Phil, you look outside and your neighbor's house is on fire. What do you call?
Hmm.
I'm asking. What do you call?
911.
Very right. If there's a car accident on your street and someone needs an ambulance, what do you do?
Again, you call 911 or
All right. You have an elderly neighbor next door that has been hit by an encryption ransomware attack and is being told to withdraw all their money from their bank account. What do you do?
that's a good question.
It sure is, and that's unfortunate. I'll ask you though, what do you think happens if you call 911 in that instance?
They're not going to be able to help you because to them that's not generally 911 sees themselves as dealing with physical crisis and physical emergencies.
You are correct. And I will say, I asked because I actually know the answer to that because I
Mhm.
called the police non-emergency line and I asked, like, hey, what if someone calls 911 and says, "Hey, I've been hacked"? And the dispatcher was very kind of like, "What do you mean? Like a computer thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what would you do?" I was like, "Well, I guess we could send a car out to take a statement, I guess." And I'm like, "All right, but then what?" She's like, "Well, I guess they just have to call tech support."
Mhm.
And I didn't quiz her on this because I'm like, when you say tech support, what do you mean by
Mhm.
tech support? Because for most people, there is no tech support.
Right.
Um, so that's where I came up with this idea of the Cyber 911, where, like, in my neighborhood, I'm sort of known as someone that my neighbors can come to for help if they need.
Mhm.
I'm their Cyber 911. If you were to ask that question to a farmer, what do
Mhm.
you think their answer would be most of the time?
Um, they wouldn't have an answer. They would be totally lost.
So you're correct in that they would be lost, but it's their grandkids.
Mhm.
Actually, was the answer the actual answer. Either someone, a relative, usually it was a grandkid, their kids,
Mhm.
someone in the neighborhood that knew computers or something like that. If I ask you the same question about people in West Baltimore, African
Mhm.
Americans in West Baltimore, what do you think their answer would be? Who is your Cyber 911?
Uh, your teacher?
Good guess. Their minister.
Oh.
So this was news to me because I'm part of the Baltimore Digital Equity Coalition, again,
Mhm.
trying to close the digital
Right.
divide. I think it was in Baltimore City, something like 40% of households literally did not have access to the internet. And in rural areas, it was like 25% or more, depending on where you were. So there was a lot of overlap between the
Mhm.
two. But when I was on these calls for as BDEC, the digital equity calls, there were lots of reverends and ministers that were on, and I was like, well, that's very interesting. And I asked about it. In that community, the church is still very much the center of the community. It's about who do you trust in your environment.
Hmm.
And so a lot of these ministers were running programs for at-risk youth to quite literally get inner city kids in Baltimore into STEM.
Hmm.
I'm letting you know about that because I didn't, that's one of those, it's almost like I call it a faith-based STEM initiative, which
Right.
actually, when I say that out loud, that sounds kind of amusing, but at the same time, it's very relevant because I imagine in rural areas where the church is also very much the center of community. Is that something that you think would be an interesting way to try to, reach out to like Catholic schools or things like that, just for getting kids into STEM?
Potentially. It's a concept that most people don't really think about, so it would need to be shown to them or
Oh
discussed.
yeah, no, I'm just throwing this one out there because again, it was news to me. I was surprised, but then it made me think that like there's a lot of again, we're trying to get more underrepresented minorities into STEM. What if we went into those communities, found where their trust emanates from, in this case, their church in many cases,
Hmm.
and started from there? With a goal towards bringing good jobs into, again, urban and rural communities. It's
Hmm.
relevant for both of them. It's the same, but it's also different, which was, an interesting thing. And I appreciated that I had made relationships that they were willing to listen to someone who looked like me. That,
Hmm.
and that's ultimately for us to solve the problem, we have to work together on that. So
Hmm.
again, thank you for having me be involved in that.
Hmm.
I guess one of the questions I would say is, what are your thoughts, I guess, on getting grant funding towards STEM education? I know that there has been drastic changes over the last, 10 years, frankly,
Hmm.
about, ease of getting grants. Are there still avenues where you can get that, or is that a problem that you and other nonprofits are facing that you?
Um, I can only speak personally. I have not had a lot of success getting grants. I mean, I know that some organizations have, so there are a lot of factors that go into it. So it's not an area I have a lot of expertise in.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Mhm.
same. Um, I guess what have you found when you're talking to young people, and now we're seeing with I'd like to shift to AI a little bit. First
Mhm.
off, share what are your opinions on the current state of AI that we have today? If you any opinions you'd care to share,
Well, it's very fuzzy. Um,
like that.
People just, I mean, there's still a lot of, it's in the very early stages. There's a lot of evolution. Some people are afraid of it. Some people are embracing it. Some people compare it to the automobile, the way it's changing society. It's just a lot of waiting right now to see where it's going to fall out and who. Hopefully, it does a lot more good than not, but that's still in the early stages.
Sure. Have you made use of any of the AI tools out there? Again, you're a one-man shop.
Yeah.
Have you dabbled at using that in any of your professional stuff?
I mean, only in contents to help my writing, but I don't let it do the initial writing, but I will write something and then I'll put into AI and usually comes a bit better. That's been the main use I have had to date with AI.
Okay. When you're working with the young people, could you share what younger people think about AI? I know what my professional peers, that again is very similar to yours, but what do kids think about it? Do they like it? Do they hate it? Do they think it's weird? Or do
And
they
they're still
talk about
learning
it?
about it. They still are learning to understand it. Again, it's new. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot to go through before you really know what to use for and what to do with it. There's actually a podcast out there called AI for Kids.
Oh, it sounds interesting.
It's
Who
run by
runs
a
that?
friend of mine. Her name is Amber Ivy. Her initials are AI. Um, and she's
Ah,
been running this for about a year and does a great job. I was on her podcast, and
that's
yeah,
pretty
it's a
cool.
really
Yeah,
good
check that
podcast.
out. The have you the kid on the whole, again, this is just your personal opinion. Do kids seem to be positive about AI or negative about AI or things that are generated by AI? Do they like that stuff or not? In your pulse on the youth.
When it can help them, they like it. When they understand it, they like it. Again, there's a lot out there to learn, and sometimes they don't always like learning.
That is well, yeah. If that was easy, we wouldn't be having the issue of STEM.
Right.
So I'd like to share something. So you know how, again, I've been working with older adults. Have you found that older individuals sometimes have harder time recognizing something being computer generated, something that you would find obvious?
I think it varies, but in general, I would say yes. And I hate to use the term older, but I mean, some people still don't like to use computers very much. They still,
They weren't invented when they were kids.
right.
There's no shame in it, you know. It's
Mm,
my parents again, and it's funny what we call people. It's older adults is technically what we're supposed to call them. I tell my mom that she's an older adult, and she laughs and
mm,
says, "No, I'm not. I'm a senior citizen."
mm,
Or respect your elders, sort of thing. But they did not grow up with computers. My parents are fairly technical-ish, but they are in the absolute edge of their ski tips.
mhm,
And the thing that breaks my heart is that the bad guys out there know this, and so they're
mhm.
deliberately targeting this
Yep.
population. One of the things but extrapolating this, I can recognize AI voices, and knock on wood, still can more or less to tell if something has been generated by an AI, of something like that. I dabble with that. You can see my background is all
Right.
this is all AI generated.
Yeah.
I show images to my son. Again, he is 9, and he hates some of the stuff. He thinks it's creepy, terrifying, disturbing, like images that, again, I look at it and I'm like, things that are a little weird that we just dismiss, like, oh, all of the images, faces are distorted into inhuman hellscapes. Why would
Mhm.
that make you scared? And I'm wondering if you've encountered that profound, like, this AI image, I hate it, from a
Mhm.
kid that we might be more willing to share. Is that something you've observed?
Um, no, I haven't observed it, but I mean, I don't see kids in that role or in that capacity very often. I mean, most time I'm seeing kids in my events,
Yeah.
and they're
Uh,
having a good time. They're
Again, a
enjoying it.
sample size of one here. That's my son,
Yeah,
sitting next to me, and I'm showing him, hey, look, I made it look like Thomas the Tank Engine was a character in Harry Potter. Look, and he's
right.
like, Dad, that's weird. Don't show
Mm,
me that.
yeah,
What? I had to do that prompt really carefully to avoid copyright.
yeah.
Um, do you? I guess, do you think this AI stuff is going to be good for STEM, or in its current form, I guess? What do you think of that?
I mean, I'd like to think it is. I'd like to be positive. I'd like to think that overall it will be used to make the world better and that people learn how to use it and to improve their lives. But as I said, it's still fuzzy. It's still uncertain right now.
Yep. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm finding that I'm trying to develop is just teaching people how to use these as tools.
Mhm,
My opinion is that AI is going to be similar to like how a computer was, or
mhm,
the internet when it first came out. Is that if you compare two average humans, give one of them a computer that's offline and give one pencil and paper, and then compare what they're capable of doing, and the one with the computer is going to run laps around the other one. Take two humans with a computer, give one of them the internet and the other one not, same thing. I think the next step is going to be give a human a computer with the internet and an AI assistant and a tool that they know how to use as an extension of themselves. They will obliterate the not. But then if you compare that to replace the human with an AI that's using that,
right,
I think that's where, one, it's gonna not work out well, and two, that's actually not a world that I think I want to be a part of, where AI is just taking all the jobs, especially
mhm,
again when we're trying to train the workforce of the future.
right.
Um, what do you think of that statement? Do you agree, or
Um, I have to
this
think
is,
about it. I'm
it's
sorry.
better to be a tool, and we need to.
Yeah, it If it's used as a tool and it's used properly, then I think AI will enhance society. But as you know, I mean, especially in your field, people like to use things to their own advantage and not necessarily to make the world a better place.
Correct. Well, and not only that, especially when it comes to education, that there was all of a sudden teachers realized that, oh, there's a machine that could quite literally write people's essays for them. And there were the kids that just, copied and paste blindly into it. And then, including the part about, as a large language model, I can't write about Shakespeare, but here's an essay that you could turn in. They didn't even edit it. To figuring out ways, strategies to make it so that, you're not trying to prevent these tools from being used because they know they're there. It's one, how do you detect them? And two, it's tough. I gotta say. Um, I guess what would you say is one of the biggest, if you could change anything about our current STEM, the way we teach kids about STEM, what would you do? Wave a magic wand.
Um, Make it as much or more interactive and more hands-on. And
Okay.
when kids get hands-on involvement, they're more engaged and they're more interested as opposed to just watching something. Um,
Makes
and
sense.
that's what we encourage at our events. I mean, it doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes people are just what they have, it's better to demonstrate. But the more hands-on, the more you're especially physically engaging them and mentally engaging them, the more they're going to like that and the more they're going to want to be geared towards that and follow those paths.
Gotcha. And actually, you just reminded me of something you mentioned before. You mentioned capture the flag. Could you explain to people listening that don't know, when we say capture the flag in the context of like IT and cybersecurity, what are you referring to?
Um, how do I describe it? It's been so long since I've been to it. Activities where I guess you're trying to, um,
Two
see,
hacker teams, basically.
yeah, you
They're
have
trying to hack
teams,
each other.
you have teams that are trying to accomplish a joint mission involving solving a problem.
Right. And the again, this is one of those things that, again, I'm 43, these such things didn't exist, but the
Yeah.
idea that it was described as like a cyber capture the flag, that it was a red team and a blue team, and they're
Mhm.
both trying to hack each other, and they're getting real world experience as to what hacking actually means, which I think is pretty sweet. Especially since we're lucky to live in a time when all the original hackers are still very much with us. It's only
Yeah.
very recent.
Yeah. A
And
lot of times they're now, or sometimes they're referred to as hackathons.
gotcha.
And the focus isn't so much trying to beat someone, but it's involved with creating things
Makes
and
sense.
solving problems. And that's really the basis of STEM is you're trying to become a problem solver, you're trying to create things, and there are different ways of doing that, and there are different areas of doing that.
Yeah, makes sense. Could you talk a little bit about one of those tactics that I think it's called gamification? The
Mhm.
idea of, could you talk a little bit about what that means?
Sure, it means using usually video games to teach a concept to get kids interested in it. We actually have a whole conference coming up on that called it's an esports conference. It's using esports and e-games to get kids thinking about different areas and what goes into sports, what goes into e-games, besides just the fun part, how there's math involved, there's science, technology. So gamification is using different video games, usually they're video games, to teach a concept. We actually have one. We've developed a video game about around agriculture, where
Oh,
kids go through the growing process and learn about growing process with a video game. It has different stages and different types of games in it. One is a hand-eye coordination where you're moving a rock. Some is where you're building an irrigation system. Some is a memory game where you're trying to see where the rocks are so you can remove them so you can plant. So that's one example of gamification. It's using games which kids like anyway and they like to play and having some concept involved in that game that is teaching them a real world problem, a real world concept that through gaming they'll like and want to pursue and want to learn more about.
yeah. And one of the things that I saw that just blew me, like when, like adding achievements into these things, which of course, for the people that are putting on whatever educational thing, achievements cost nothing.
Hmm.
But it's amazing the amount of effort people will put into getting those little checkbox things.
Right.
And you don't have to convince them. So that's pretty interesting. Well, Phil, do you have any materials that you'd like to share? You mentioned that you had some stuff you wanted to show. If you
Well,
want
I
to.
just want to show, hopefully I
Yeah.
can find it. First, I just like to show our poster, um,
Yep.
which was created by my assistant. And it just highlights this year our theme is energy. So there are a lot of events focusing on how energy is produced, how you interact with it. Not every event. We still want to have events, and there still will be plenty of events on a variety of topics, like again, from astronomy to zoology, engineering, AI. But there are a number of events that will be focusing on energy. The other thing I wanted to show, and I really want to talk about, it's, is where is it? We have been doing an event we call the Blue Collar STEM Conference.
All right.
And what that involves is increasing awareness on jobs that involve STEM, but don't necessarily require the four-year college degree to get into it. College is great for many students um, and it is the best path for some, and it may be a path eventually that students go on, but it's not the right path for a lot of students for various reasons. They don't like sitting, it is expensive, they want to get into workforce sooner or later. So we have this event where we try to increase awareness on jobs through a wide range of fields, including cybersecurity, where you can get into those fields through different avenues, through community colleges, through trade schools, through internships, through apprenticeships, through certifications. So we have this event. It's going to be on October 25th at Howard Community College, and we're going to have a variety of speakers talking about some of the jobs in these fields and some of the way you can get some of these jobs. Um, we feel it's very important because, as I mentioned, college is not the best path for everyone.
I could not agree more. And I say that as someone who has 2 degrees. I have a undergraduate degree in computer science, where I discovered that I wasn't a really good programmer. And then I have my master's in business administration with a focus in information systems. But that being said, you're totally right that I think a lot of people get discouraged by getting into cybersecurity, let's say, because they believe that in order to even get an entry level job in cybersecurity, you got to have that 4 year degree. You got to have a postgraduate education. And you probably have to have work experience at some government
Mm.
agency. Honestly, that is not true. I
Yeah.
love this. I perked up when I heard about the Blue Collar STEM conference because you're right that there are blue collar, again, going in person to fix computers and tech support and engineering work. Those in some ways could be described as blue collar jobs. They're,
Mhm.
but not to despair. We use that term too disparagingly, I think.
Yes.
And that needs to stop, especially because, like you said, college isn't for everyone, especially in today's world where the cost of college continues to go up. Um, and I think we as professionals need to do our part to not look at someone that doesn't have that 4 year degree and be willing to give them a chance.
Hmm.
Because I will say, I don't have a cybersecurity graduate degree because it wasn't invented when I was in school. Um, it just, there are people that have experience before the degrees. And again, these certifications absolutely have value, but I love that you can get it as you start to have on the job experience of working with computers. Again, I can only speak. My son has never known a time without computers. He was born in 2016. You and I remember the time when we didn't have these things. And if we didn't know something, we either have to go to this place called a library and
Hmm.
check a book. For young people listening, that's like a printed out version of the internet,
Yeah.
called an encyclopedia.
Right.
My son can do things with computers just because he has grown up with them. He is not intimidated by them. And I forced him to learn how to use one of these things, a keyboard, as opposed to just using a touchscreen.
Hmm.
So that, computers can do more than just play games. You can also make your own games and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Again, start young. Like,
Yeah. Well,
Um,
sticking with the cybersecurity theme and the Blue Collar STEM conference, one of the participants in the event is the Technology Advancement Center, which you are probably familiar with,
yeah, that's
in Columbia,
absolutely.
Maryland, and they teach and do research in cybersecurity, and they will be there talking about training in cybersecurity in different paths than the traditional college path.
Well, I'm definitely going to put this on my calendar. So again, for all those listening, Saturday, October 25th at Howard Community College, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Going to be this great topic of the Blue Collar STEM Conference. So, Phil, I know you mentioned that you had a stop coming up. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. Are there any other topics that you want to share or while we're here?
Well, again, I want to direct everyone to the website, www.marylandstemfestival.org. I encourage you to go to the website and find the events that interest you and your family. Again, we have listed, I think, about 450 events in a wide range of fields, a wide range of locations, and there's something for everyone. One of my favorite statements is, not all STEM is for everyone, but there is some area of STEM for everyone.
I like
And that is one of the purposes, again, for the festival, is to provide a wide range of experiences in different areas of STEM so students can hopefully find the area that interests them. They may not be interested in cybersecurity, but they may be interested in astronomy. They may be interested in engineering. They may not like zoology, but they may like agriculture. So
Right.
that is one of the goals of the festival, is to provide these diverse views, diverse experiences in STEM so that the student can find the one that appeals to them.
Makes a lot of sense. And spin our propellers on that. Yeah, I totally agree on that. And again, for those listening, STEM education is something that as we move into an increasingly technological world, we have to do this. You know, our country will be left behind if we don't educate our future workers to be, what I say is I want them to be users of technology, not consumers. I want you to think about a computer as something that has a monitor and a keyboard attached to it, not one of these things that in some cases have one or zero buttons. And they're just more for consuming content. That's not the world. We don't want everybody hooked up to the matrix. We want people to be able to program and stuff like that. Um, but no, thank you so much, Phil. And
I have two things I want
yeah,
to leave
sure.
with. First off, again, I talk about how we need to make STEM fun. And we've developed an event in conjunction with the National Cryptological Foundation, which we call Cyber Feud. And basically, it takes the concept of the game show Family Feud, and it has created a competition where all the questions are based on cybersecurity. And that will be taking place at Loyola Blake Field at Towson, in Towson, where 8 high school teams from around the state will be competing in the format, again, of the Family Feud game,
That's cool.
trying to answer questions about cybersecurity.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah. The
How
other
do you
thing,
set something like that up?
well, it's taken a bit of time. It's evolved. We are very fortunate to have a gentleman that basically could be Steve Harvey. His name is Darnell Washington with the foundation. And a group of us have just gotten together and we've worked on this. And they actually took it down to the what's it called? The Black Data Processors Association, and did it at their conference. And this will be the third year we've done it, and everybody involved seems to enjoy it. And we hope that we'll keep growing it. There's even talk of taking it to other places, maybe even down to Florida next year. There's been some interest at some of the organizations near NASA down there. So I think, again, this is a way to show that STEM is fun. I also want to quickly address, you asked how this started. And this all started with a trip my son and I took to the very first USA and Science Engineering Festival in DC. He actually came to me and said, "This is what I want to do as part of my birthday." And he was 10, so we went down there, we experienced it, we had a great time. He wanted to try and do something similar on a smaller scale. We did something small at his school in Columbia, at his middle school, and a couple other parents were there and said they want to try and partner with me. So we decided to try and make it countywide, and for a number of years we held a HoCo STEM Festival, and that eventually grew into the statewide Maryland STEM Festival.
That's fantastic. Um, And I guess what made you successful in that? And why was this why has this been able to go as long as it has?
Well, the number one reason is the support of the community. I'd like to think I'm Superman, but I know I'm not. Without the support of the libraries, the schools, the colleges, the companies, the government agencies, the STEM professionals, this would have died a long time ago. But all these people agree with my vision that it's necessary and that we need to have it. And through their support, we have been able to keep it going and hopefully be able to keep it going even longer. Again, this is the 11th year of the festival. And the other thing is just my passion for wanting to try to make the world a better place. And I feel I have limited skills, but I think I'm a bit of a good administrator and a good manager. And so by overseeing and managing this and driving it and creating these partnerships, I have been able to make it a success and hopefully will continue to make success with support of hundreds, if not thousands of people around the state.
Well, that's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing that story. Again, that's what one of the things we're really trying to accomplish with this podcast and just building this HoCo Cyber Collective is exactly what you just said. It's all about the community. A lot of these resources, you didn't have to build the library system. You just had to partner with them
Yeah.
because they're already there. And I found working in this that there's so many good people that really want to make a difference that if they just have someone that starts pointing and taking charge, they're willing to listen. And that's, I commend you for doing that. Again, 11 years is fantastic. That is
Yeah.
amazing. Um,
And again, I want to emphasize that I want to show that STEM is for everyone. It's not just for certain groups of people.
yeah, I
Um,
agree. As one of the people who STEM is ostensibly for, I agree. There's room for everybody. And again, some of the most talented, interesting engineers and technical people that I've had the privilege of calling mentors are women, minorities, people that very much don't look like me. And that's actually, in some ways, interesting because they have different perspectives than I did. I don't have all the answers. None of us do. It's only by working together as a community and being willing to work with all parts of the community because I really feel that everybody has something to contribute. I like to think that. The hackers, I guess they're just jerks. But for the most part, most people want to be part of a community that values them, that is local, and just scaling it up. If everybody's community is taken care of, and then we get the communities to work together, it's like you said, you started in Howard County, now you're statewide. It's really just inspirational to what we could build. So, Phil, thank
yes.
you very I think we're gonna just you can stay on just for a second. But everybody, I hope everybody found that interesting. So thank you very much for tuning in for this episode of the HoCo Cyber Collective podcast. Check out, I'll put websites in the descriptions for all the different events that are going on. And yes, the Maryland STEM Festival, highly recommend, fantastic event. Again, running from October 17th to November 16th. Check out the websites. And yes, thanks for tuning in next time for our next episode. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Brought to you by the HoCo Cyber Collective.